Welcome to the Red Beard Embodiment Podcast. I am your host, Alex Green, and I'm on a mission to bring the power of embodiment to people all around the world. In this podcast, we explore how embodiment practices, trauma healing, and knowledge about the human nervous system can help us find our ground, discover new sources of meaning, and create connection in an ever-changing world. The deepest change is embodied change. All right. Well, I am really happy to be sitting down here with longtime friend and mentor and colleague, Jacy Sundlie. And Jacy is based in Madison, Wisconsin, although like me, she sometimes floats back and forth between Colorado, where she has some roots as well. Jacy is a longtime TRE trainer. She's part of the founding team that that created the TRE Tension and Trauma Release certification program here in the United States. Once Dr. Berceli brought it back here and started getting organized with creating the certification program. I was fortunate that Jacy was my certification trainer. I think I met you back in around 2013 or 14. I can never remember the year, but that was that. And Jacy is has a master's in psychology, is a licensed social worker, as well as a longtime yoga practitioner and teacher. As she wears hats beyond that we might also talk about as well. So in any case, Jacy, really happy to sit down with you today.
It's great to see you, Alex. Great.
Well, so as I told you, Jacy, this is part of this recording is part of a series that I'm doing. Not all of the podcasts are TRE focused, but a lot of them are, because part of what I'm wanting to do is capture just some of the historical context around the shaping of how TRE got to where we are today. And several weeks back, I did a conversation with David and heard about some of his, even before it was called TRE, the development of it there. But I thought it would be really nice to talk with you about some of the early days here in the United States. And I know that you have such I always like hearing your story about how you found your way to TRE, which is, in many ways, always everybody has a different story. But I wonder if we could start there, maybe just sort of set the scene. Where were you? What were you doing? And how did you hear the name Dr. David Berceli?
Okay. I was in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Again, like Alex said, I'm half in Colorado, half in Wisconsin. So I was in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and I was working for a woman who did neurofeedback. And she came in all excited one day, and this was in late 2008. She came in one day really excited. She said, "There's a trauma therapist in the area. I've been wanting to meet him forever. And he's here in 10 days because another person canceled on him." Without thinking, I said, "I'll put together something." And I had no idea what it was, what he did, who he was, nothing about David whatsoever. So I met up with a person by the name of Rita Marsh, who runs a nonprofit in Carbondale with Davy to Kent. And she connected me with Rita, and Rita had heard of David. So we put together this workshop in 10 days. We had about 50 or 60 people there. The day before the workshop, she asked me if I'd go pick him up at the airport. And I said, yeah. I said, "But do you have a picture of him or a book? I have no idea who this guy is, what he looks like, or anything."
Sure.
So she gave me his book and I saw his picture. So I went to Aspen to pick the guy up, met him, and on our conversation on our way back to Glenwood Springs, I don't even remember what we were talking about, but I remember looking at him and saying, "I'll do whatever you want me to do, David." It was just there. And I have been with Dave ever since, working alongside and behind the scenes a lot, not so much in front, but behind the scenes a lot. So Dave came and did a workshop there, and We had like 50, 60 people. And I remember I still have a picture of him standing on a table doing his lectures because people couldn't see him. There were so many in the room. It was in a gymnasium. He
Interesting.
was
Yeah.
standing on a table doing a lecture on the
Yeah.
table. Um, got to know him. I- Like I said, had no idea who he was or what he did, just knew I had to do something. And I've heard other people tell me that story through the years, that
Hmm.
something just clicked.
What do you remember? I mean, I'm sure that, because it sounds to me like you had that feeling. I mean, on the one hand, you kind of reflexively said yes to organizing a training, and I'm guessing you've had some background that led you to feel confident about your organizational skills. But
I've
anyway,
done event producing for years. Yeah.
right. Okay. So you reflexively said yes. And then you picked him up in the airport. And it sounds like you had the clarity that this was a person that you were going to spend a lot of time with and really dedicate a lot of your time and energy towards, even before you did the workshop. Do you remember anything about, I don't know, was it his presence? Was it the things he was talking about? Was it just a gut feeling? What do you think that was for you?
I actually, Alex, have never experienced anything like that in my life. And if on a spiritual note,
Yeah.
doesn't matter what your belief system is. From a yogic tradition, it was my dharma, and
Hmm.
it was instantaneous. I knew I had to do it, whether I wanted to or not. It was just there.
Got it. Wow. Very cool. That first seminar. So place us in time. Is this around like 2009, 2010, something like that?
This was late 2008 that we brought
Okay.
him to Glenwood Springs. In 2009, I had been working with Dave, and he had come to work in the fire department, police department, Jaywalkers, which is a drug and alcohol center,
Okay.
military. We were just really trying to push TRE in the area. And in 2009, I created a logo for him, which I tease him now. It cost him $225 for the logo back then.
And
So
it's
it's
still
not
the
mine,
logo.
it's
It's
his.
still the logo we use today, right?
Well, it is. It's a semblance of the logo. But
Okay.
I wanted to just tell you what the logo means so people can have an idea. The logo, if you've seen it, is a picture of the world and an eagle, and it's got TRE for all, and it has the old one has TRE, release, rebalance, renew. It's got the original one actually had a dove,
Hmm.
because the idea came from myself, my daughter, and a friend of mine, where I created the world because it was such an international global thing.
Right.
My daughter came up with the idea of a bird flying, and the idea that it originally created was a dove, because it's a bird of peace. Now
Hmm.
that changed into an eagle because Dave was working in the military and wanted to be in the military, and a dove was too soft, so we changed it to an eagle. And
Okay.
then a friend of mine came up with the
More
words release,
patriotic.
rebalance, renew, which is exactly what TRE does.
Right. Yeah. Well, so that global nature of it, I wonder if you could just speak to that a little bit, because so it sounds, this is probably around the time. I mean, Dave spent the bulk of his career living overseas. Was this around when he was spending more time in the United States again?
Yes, he was. It was brand new in the United States.
Okay.
This was 2009. It was brand new.
And in
Um,
some ways, the growth of TRE even though Dave is American, we were in a way the last. We were we're one of the younger communities because seeds were planted in other places first. For folks who are trying to understand this global nature, which to me that's one of the really unique things about TRE and TRE for all, the organization, is how global and multicultural it is. Could you just share a little bit about that global element?
well, when we started putting together, how can we teach people to teach other people and make sure that they're safe? Okay.
Right,
I
right.
remember David at the beginning saying, you need to be grounded and you need to keep your person safe. Otherwise, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're gone from there. And so he talked to us a lot about different countries around the world and what they were doing. And Dave was just going around telling people they could train other people. at that point. It was like there was no organization to it.
Yeah.
And Sherry Mills and Joan McDonald and myself, and there was Heiner and Mariano from Brazil, were all
Mm.
involved. And there was a woman in California named Flanagan. We decided to put together kind of a structure for it on how to teach people to teach TRE, because we were in the United States. The
Mm.
United States is a lot more structured.
Yeah.
And I was kind of in the background of that. I wasn't writing the certification. That came more from Joan and Sherry.
Okay.
But I had input in it. I did a modification DVD with Mary Shriver. So that part of it, and we wrote it originally doing a level 1 and a level 2.
Mm.
Level 1 was teaching individuals, level 2 was teaching groups. Well, we found
Right.
out later that Germany had it where level 1 was teaching groups and level 2 was teaching individuals.
Sure.
So we thought, okay, we need to figure this out where we can, because people travel around the world.
Right. Right.
So that's kind of where we changed to TRE providers. And so
Which
everybody
in
could
a
have
way
kind
was
of
a
a,
combination of level 1 and level 2 got joined together, which is the form that we have in the certification today.
right. So it could be more international and global rather than each country having their own certification requirements.
I see. So in those early days, like the Glenwood Springs days, when you were organizing like that first event, who was so TRE wasn't really known yet, but Dave must have had a little bit of a reputation. Who was the audience? Social workers or
We had,
addictions folks or
yeah, we had addictions, we had fire department, we had police department. That's who was in military.
Hmm,
There was a young guy by the name of Adam McCabe, and David has a lot of videos of Adam.
yeah.
And I literally fell in love with this kid. Um, I met him. I actually read an article in a newspaper, and I thought, I've got to get to know this kid. And so I contacted Adam, and Adam helped bring people to Glenwood Springs from the military. So
And he was an Iraqi war
he's an
veteran, right?
Iraqi, yeah, a vet.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
He was,
I didn't know that story. You read about him and that's how he came into the
and then I found
TRE
him.
community.
Yeah. I read the
Wow.
story and I went, I've got to find this guy. Because he had talked about being in all kinds of therapy and nothing was working.
Hmm.
And I knew David was coming to do a workshop, so I tracked him down. It, Colorado on the western slope was pretty small, so somebody knew him. It was like
Yeah, you were able to find him.
we found him. Yeah.
Yeah, I met him once. I met him at the Tempe advanced training.
Okay.
And thought it and certainly saw his videos, and he did such a good job of speaking to the benefits of TRE for post-traumatic stress for vets, at which the countless people have vets have been helped. But it's nice when you have a spokesperson in a way, or somebody who you know benefited firsthand, is in that community. He's going to be the kind of guy who will get other young men Trump interested.
That's what's so wonderful about TRE is the fact that you can go in and train somebody to teach other people. I'm not a vet, and we taught the VA hospital here in Madison, Wisconsin in 2017.
Mhm.
But I taught people how to teach vets. I'm not a vet, so I don't teach them.
Right.
So, and the police officers the same way. It's like you go in and you teach a policeman, and they can go in and teach their guys. So
Yeah.
that's how it works so well with going into these different agencies.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So then fast forwarding a couple of years, was it around, was it like 2012, 2013, or when was the global certification sort of standardized in
Well,
the way that we
the
have it
first,
now?
can I share a funny story with you?
Of course, please do.
Okay. David came and did the first level 1 training in Aspen, Colorado. Sherry Mills and Dave and I put it together. David taught it. And that's actually when I had my aha moment that changed my life. But what he did when we got done, we were sitting around my house and we were talking and going, okay, well, should we try the certification program? And it was like, okay, let's give it a shot. Maybe we'll have a couple of people that want to do it.
Hmm.
We had 20 people that wanted to sign up for the certification program. we got back to my house and I said, what should we do? And Sherry said, I'm going to Puerto Rico. And David says, I'm going to Brazil. And they said, good luck, JC, you're on your own. So that's how I became a trainer.
Oh my gosh. And so you had to finish the training for these 20 people.
Yeah, I
Got it.
certified them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
actually when I first started working with groups.
Okay.
We did it as a group.
And so that was what, about 2012 or
That was 2010,
okay, 2010.
or March of 2010. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, very cool. So maybe for those who are listening, some certainly are going to already know TRE, and then some less so. To me, one of the things that stands out about TRE when we compare it to other, nervous system modalities like somatic experiencing, to me, one of the unique things is, sure, you can do it one-on-one, but it can be done in groups. Many of David's experiences overseas were leading large groups. That's still a big emphasis of how we teach it now. And you're known, your reputation is as a person just very comfortable with groups of different sizes. And I think you mostly teach, when you teach TRE, you're mostly teaching groups
Yes.
as opposed to one-on-one work. What is it about group work that you really like, that kind of brings you alive?
For me, and I did this as a therapist before I did TRE, what happens in a group is everybody has their own expertise. I'm not an expert in anything. And when I have a group of people together, they all share their expertise. And when they all share their expertise, we all learn 10 times more than we would with me sitting and trying to tell somebody something.
Mm,
So I use it as a learning tool for everybody. And everybody feels heard in that group. It's like, wow, you know this, and okay, you know that, and you know this. And um, so we use each other to learn from.
mm.
And that's why I love working in groups.
And so that's true both when you're certifying providers, because you've done that for 13, 14 years. Um, and also you've led a lot of public groups as well, I imagine. Um,
What I what
I
I
know
call
because I've helped you with a few, like like at Monona Terrace and other
right.
places. Yeah.
What I what I teach in my certification programs, which I actually don't teach very many anymore, but I teach the difference between teaching and facilitating. And I call myself a facilitator, not a teacher.
Mm,
I do not like standing in front of a group of people telling them things. That's not my style. I would
mm,
much rather sit in a circle and have everybody share with what's going on and have input in that.
I see.
So I teach the difference between teaching and facilitating. So I call myself a facilitator.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Very cool. Let's see. Uh, I guess I'm curious, I've talked about, we've been talking about the early days of the certification, how that got shaped, and your role as an educator for the organization, and I think, what's the word you've used? Well, producer, I think.
Event producer. Yeah.
Because you've done a lot of helping David create events and things like that. But on the personal side, I'm curious, for you with TRE. I'm always curious, like, what their personal practice has been. And so, sometimes it's hard to talk about. You don't have to talk about every aspect of it, but I just wonder, what's that been, your journey on the personal level, by knowing about the tremor mechanism and whatnot.
Well, a couple of things I'm going to share with. I said I was immediately drawn to David and knew I had to work with him. Didn't know why. But
Mm,
when he was teaching the module one in Aspen, I remember him teaching the belief system and talking about post-traumatic growth. And it was a huge aha moment for me because I'd traveled and I'd learned all these and have all this education and blah, 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 trying to figure out what to do. And he taught, I had a little sister that was 4, when I was 19 that died, and we went through a year, and I was kind of like mom to her because I was giving my mom a break all the time.
Mm,
So when she died, it blew my belief system totally up. I had no idea what to do. And like David talks about it, you try and make it go back to where it should be or where it was before, and you
mm,
can't do that. And so I spent probably 10 years trying to go back and making it work until I saw David teach how you can evolve from the trauma.
mm.
So it was a huge aha changing moment for me. So it was like this light bulb went off.
Yep.
Ever since then, I also run on adrenaline being a social worker. I mean, I did child welfare, I did all kinds and event producing. It's like you run on adrenaline.
Mm,
And I remember at the level 2 training we did in Aspen, all of a sudden I had been doing TRE for probably 6 months. And I remember making sure everything was all done and blah, 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 blah. Here, run here, there, and make sure everything's done. And I remember being able to sit down and actually listen to the man talk.
mm.
And it was like, I didn't have anything to do. That was the first, it was like, oh my God, my nervous system had calmed down and down regulated to where I could actually hear and see what he was talking about. It was very, again, another aha moment with David.
Mm.
But it's cured things like my TMJ. Anytime uh, after doing it for 14, 15 years now, my body will actually just tremor when it wants to. I don't, I
Yeah.
don't do a daily practice or anything. It just starts tremoring when it
Right.
needs to. But those are the two major things that I can remember happening.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. Um, and I can really relate that you just jogged a memory for me from where I remember also in the module one and that actually that my first series, David came for module one, which was great. Sherry was there too. David did a lot of the lecturing,
I
and
think
then
that was in
just
Chicago, wasn't it?
no, it was actually in Madison.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, but then that was an example where then you had to do module 2 and 3 because or the rest of it. But what I do remember is the same thing. I mean, there were many parts of the my the that a lot of it was sort of opening my eyes at that time. But the lecture on the belief systems really moved me as well for a few reasons. One, that it was a framework that was respectful and um, open to or recognized that of course people bring their various belief systems. We can't pretend that that's not a part of what people bring to the table. But I really appreciated what's the word? Basically, holding space that TRE for many people is a quite powerful experience. Can lead to some powerful experiences, but it put it in a framework that was, basically respectful of all traditions,
Right.
religious
Right.
and otherwise. So that was one thing. It just that sort of just broad scope around it, but also that concept of post-traumatic growth was new for me at that time too, and the idea that some of the biggest ruptures leave us scrambling for meaning making, and no one wishes for those kinds of nobody invites those kinds of ruptures and traumas into their lives, but there's at least the possibility of something new being born out of that.
Yes.
And so I think that was what hooked me on the trauma work in general. That serving people, that to me there's a certain degree of optimism. I mean, I always feel, what's the word, um, a bit, I feel somber in the face of people's stories. But something that, being in this field, I really appreciate is there's this certain kind of optimism, which is that new growth is possible, and it's powerful, and it's moving, and it's
Right.
and
And
it's
Dave calls it evolution. And yeah,
it's
it's like you can take it beyond.
yeah,
Yes.
it's evolutionary. We are designed, if we're designed for that. And
Right.
so I'm just remembering how impactful that was for me
Yep.
too. So yeah, great to share that. I'm always curious about the topic of we think of TRE as helping with stress, trauma, helping with physical things, sciatica, back pain, all those kinds of
Hmm.
things. But I'm always curious about when it opens up new doors, creatively, or people's just sort of emotional self-expression and things like that. And I wanted to ask you, and we haven't talked about this in a while, but I know that a very different part of your work has been working with masks, and I don't know if there's a connection to TRE, but I wonder if there is. I wonder if you could just tell us about that work that you do.
Well, masks started before TRE.
Okay.
Okay. This was back in the early 90s. And my business partner and I just became creative and started our own nonprofit. And we made plaster face masks of people. It was when the AIDS community was sky high, and there was very much a lot of prejudice in the AIDS community. So we
Okay.
started making face masks, and we made this huge 4 foot by 7 foot um, exhibit. And we actually premiered at the Guthrie Art or Walker Art Center and Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis on our debut.
Mm,
And we made faces of AIDS patients. And then we made masks of children and Black people and white people and Asian people. And when you
mm,
put them on this big exhibit, you couldn't tell the difference. It was a humanity. And we called it Faces of Love, a Living Legacy.
mm,
So we did that for about 10 years and couldn't make a living doing it. So it was like he was a scientist, he still is a scientist, and I was a social worker, and it was like we can't make a living doing this nonprofit. It doesn't work.
I see.
But we did a lot of groups with that, and I have recently been combining TRE with mask making because of my business partner Robert's scientific background on how to do this, and then my therapy background with how to resolve it. And we actually did a mask on David a year ago,
Oh, cool.
and he had a really nice experience. But
Hmm.
it's taking the mask off and seeing who you are behind that mask, because we all
Hmm.
wear the masks in the world. So it's the same
Yeah.
thing with TRE. It's
So are you doing workshops around that, or is that something you're kind of still active for you, or?
Yeah, my business partner Robert and I, he lives in Flagstaff, Arizona. So when I'm in Colorado, I'm a lot closer to him.
I see.
We were actually going to do a workshop this next weekend, and we canceled it because I'm moving. So
Uh,
yes, we're starting to work a little bit more with it. I thought it'd be kind of fun to mix it with TRE, and have people. And David actually did tremor while we were doing a mask on him, so it
oh,
was kind of
cool.
cool.
Very cool. Well, so the other thing that I know you've been up to, because I over the last several years, and this had begun just before the pandemic, that we were going to have some events in Madison, and part of it was going to be kind of a commemoration of I don't know if it was the 10-year or something anniversary to the certification program in the United States. And obviously that couldn't happen because that was scheduled in March of 2020.
Right.
Um, but over these last several years, you've been doing some work around that, documenting, um, uh, putting together some materials and documenting things. Some of that may be under wraps, I'm not sure, but is there anything you could share about the project you're working on?
No, there were two projects. One, Sherry Mills and I put a book together for David for his retirement. And I think you're in that book.
Right.
So a lot of the trainers are in the book, and they were private messages to David, a lot of pictures and stuff. So we presented that to him a year ago.
Mm.
And now we're working on the actual history of TRE, which is so ironic that you're doing the same thing on a video. And
Mm.
so we're actually getting a hold of all trainers, and I have a whole lot of paperwork right now on just linear what happened in what country when
And
and
are
what are
you
they
gonna,
doing.
what will the format be like? Or will this be, you're gonna put together a book or a document or a webs, or is
Joan
this,
and Sherry and I are going to work on that in June.
yeah.
It's been suggested doing a couple minute videos from people. I've got paperwork from people. I'm not sure how that's going to look, but we'll make sure that it's available on the website, because I think it's so important to know where you come from
Mm.
and to remember where you come from and why we're doing what we're doing, and then to move forward with it and build on it, because not everything there is working. I mean, it's expanding so much. It's like, okay, but take what we've done and make it better.
Mm. On that note of remembering where we came from and where we are going, um, I was curious, as you look out, we're what, maybe 15 years into certification here in the United States. I don't know what the latest numbers are but there's probably 6 or 7,000 providers.
Yeah,
Don't
I,
quote me on that.
I
So,
don't know either.
there's been growth. What's in your view, if you look out over a 10 or 20 year time horizon, what do you think, how would you like to see TRE grow and expand? What areas do you think it could influence? How could it serve the world over the next couple decades?
I think what we're doing is wonderful. I think we all have different ideas on how to make it happen. And again, going back to the beginning when David said for us to stay grounded and keep our people safe, and that's what we need to teach.
Mm.
I like, because of what I've done in the past, I like working with policemen so they can go into the police departments and work with other policemen. I like work with a VA so I can teach a vet how to do this so they can teach other vets. So that's kind of where my love is right now.
Mm.
Um, and I'm half retired, so I'm both. My mind doesn't know how old my body is.
Well, you just got to shake a little more,
I
Jacy.
think so.
Yeah, very cool. What haven't we covered that would be, that we should touch on?
Well, just a little more history I can give you is we did the first global meeting of trainers in Costa Rica
Oh,
in
right.
2011, and we had a lot of fun, and that was kind of where the international organization started to build.
Mm.
We didn't do the nonprofit till 2014, but this was in 2011, first part of 2011. So we got
And there
together in Costa Rica.
there were and wasn't that the first of several kind of
It was the
uh
first. Yeah,
planning meetings
right.
where, yeah, okay,
And then they had one every couple of years. They had one in South Africa after that. And then I know they've been in several other places, including Japan. You were in Japan, in Croatia.
Japan,
Yeah,
Croatia were the ones that I was there for. Yep, this is
yeah,
all pre-pandemic. Yep.
yeah. And then we did a big fundraiser in Las Vegas, which was a lot of fun too in 2011. And a lot of
Oh,
people from around the globe came to that. So it was very international.
huh.
Um,
Hopefully nobody gambled away all of the
I
all of
have
the
no idea. We just
all the fundraised dollars.
we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. Mary Shriver was working on. She was a provider, and Mary and I worked together. And she knew a lot of people in Vegas. She lived in Vegas. Her husband was an entertainer, so we
Great.
kind of got an in. It's the first time Dave and I ever rode in a limousine. It was in Las Vegas. So
The perfect place
yeah,
to have your first limo ride. Very
right.
cool. Very cool. Great. Well, Jacy, thank you so much for just sharing, giving just a window into what that developmental stage was like, and kind of some of the spirit that shaped the form that we have TRE in today. So yeah, really appreciate hearing all
Thank you,
that.
Alex. And it was so much fun going back through some of this stuff and talking to a few people and saying, what do you remember here? What did we do here? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun putting it together.
Very cool. We'll look forward to seeing what you and Sherry and Joan are piecing together. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Super, super. Thank you so much, Alex. It was great.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Red Beard Embodiment Podcast. To learn more, visit us at redbeardsomatictherapy.com or send me an email at alex@redbeardsomatictherapy.com. If today's conversation resonated with you, help spread the word by subscribing and sharing with others. Hope to see you next time.